You have won over your party and your people. You now stand as the new leader of a nation. And at this point, your primary goal is to repay the voters and please your citizens. But all of that depends on what you and your country have to offer Washington, the guardian of free and fair elections. Fail to please Washington, and your grip on power might fade, and fast.
We condemn the Hong Kong government's decision to postpone for 1 year its legislative council elections.
Nicolas Maduro is a dictator with no legitimate claim to power.
The probe conducted uncovered proof of massive and systemic fraud. It honored the Bolivian people's courageous demand for a free and fair election and for democracy.
Well, what goes around comes around. And in 2020, there are big international concerns about America's election.
Overall, Office for Democratic Institutions and Human Rights Needs Assessment Mission interlocutors noted that the conduct of these elections will be the most challenging in recent decades. They expect that election officials will face serious challenges prior to and on Election Day due to new measures in response to COVID-19 pandemic and express concerns over their ability to overcome them.
So let's break down what those concerns are. COVID-19 has forced many parts of the country to go to mail-in voting. Now, the concerns there have been laid bare. Ballots rejected, huge delays, and some ballots discarded. So there's no surprise that some are raising concerns of fraud, including Donald Trump himself.
This election will be the most rigged election in history. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen.
Here's why Donald Trump and the public have some serious concerns, even more than just a few months ago.
East Texas official is in jail accused of committing voter fraud.
Manatee County Supervisor of Elections Mike Bennett says Wiggins requested a mail-in ballot for himself and his wife.
Meanwhile, the state election board is asking Georgia's attorney general to look into 98 outstanding cases of voter fraud.
DOJ announced that the FBI and the Pennsylvania State Police are investigating fraud in mail-in ballots in Luzerne County.
Okay, so what about good old voting in person then? Fewer polling places, long lines, last-minute relocations of polling places, and a lack of international observers. Not convincing either, especially for one Democratic senator who's gone slightly over the top with this comparison.
If Congress and states don't act immediately, our country could face an electoral Chernobyl this fall.
And if you think the vote challenges will be over as soon as the polls close, so now the media is ramping up. What if Donald Trump loses but refuses to leave office?
Do you commit to making sure that there's a peaceful transfer of power?
We want to get rid of the ballots, and we'll have a very peaceful. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation. The ballots are out of control. You know it.
All of this has got Americans bracing for the worst. Polls show that Americans expect riots in the streets after the results are announced, no matter which way it goes. Potential ballot fraud, lack of international observers, leaders potentially refusing to accept the results, and the specter of violence. None of this sounds like an atmosphere in which one can have a free, fair, and transparent election. And a quick look across the Atlantic shows that only 1 in 10 Europeans think that the election's going to be free and fair. Sanctions, condemnation, appeals to the United Nations, and endless grandstanding. Perhaps the results if this kind of election was seen by the United States happening in another country. Illegitimate, they might call it. Well, perhaps it's time that the United States, Trump and Biden, realize that sometimes it's just as red, white, and blue on the other side of the fence. Caleb Maupin, RT, New York.